Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Super English Talks. My name is Jara, and I'm so happy you're here with me today. Let me ask you a quick question. Are you ready to really improve your English listening and speaking skills? Have you ever been in a conversation where you were smiling, nodding your head, pretending to understand, but inside, you were completely lost? Or maybe you knew exactly what you wanted to say in your mind, but when you tried to speak, the words came out slowly or not at all. If that has ever happened to you, then you are in the perfect place. Because in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make your English stronger, not by memorizing endless grammar rules, not by studying boring textbooks, but by listening to real-life stories filled with useful vocabulary and expressions that people actually use every day. Listening to stories like these will train your ears to understand English the way it's really spoken. And when you repeat the words and sentences after me, you'll practice speaking more smoothly, one phrase at a time. So, I want you to sit back, relax, and get comfortable. Let's begin our journey together. Now, let me ask you another question. Have you ever had a moment where you completely misunderstood someone in English? Maybe just because of one small word? Think about it. Imagine you're at a restaurant. You're hungry, you're excited to eat, and you try to order your food. But the waiter looks at you with total confusion. Or maybe you're at work, in a meeting with a coworker. Later, you realize you missed an important detail. Moments like these can feel so frustrating, right? They can make you feel discouraged, even a little embarrassed. Let me share a story about my good friend, Leo. A few years ago, Leo traveled to New York City for the very first time. It was his dream trip. For years, he had imagined walking through the busy streets, seeing the tall buildings, hearing the sounds of the city. When he finally arrived, he was full of excitement. But underneath all that excitement, he was also nervous. Nervous about speaking English in such a fast, busy city. On his very first morning, Leo wanted to live like a local. He walked into a small, cozy cafe, the kind of place you might see in a movie. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air. He was ready to order a simple breakfast, a croissant and a coffee. Before walking in, he had practiced the words many times in his head. He thought, this will be easy. I can do this. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the counter, smiled at the cashier, and said confidently, "Can I have a croissant and a coffee, please?" But to his surprise, the cashier looked at him with confusion. Her eyebrows pulled together, and she asked, "Sorry, what was that?" Leo felt his confidence shrink a little. He tried again, speaking slower this time. "A croissant and a coffee." But again, the cashier shook her head.
She still didn't understand.
Leo's heart began to beat faster. He could feel his cheeks getting hot with embarrassment. He thought, why is this happening? I practiced. I said it clearly. Why can't she understand me? He was about to give up. He almost decided to just point to the croissant behind the glass display. But then something happened. A kind older man standing in line leaned forward, smiled, and said to the cashier, "I think he means a croissant." Suddenly, the cashier understood. She nodded, smiled back at Leo, and repeated, "Oh, a croissant. Sure, of course." In that moment, Leo learned something very powerful. He realized that speaking English is not only about knowing the right words from a textbook. Pronunciation makes a huge difference. You can know a word in your mind, but if you don't pronounce it the way people are used to hearing it, they might not understand you. This experience showed Leo that learning English from books and grammar rules is one thing, but using English in real conversations is something completely different. And that's exactly why listening is so important. The more you listen to natural English, the kind spoken in everyday life, the more your brain gets used to the sounds, the rhythm, and the flow of the language. Slowly, it all starts to feel natural. And once you've heard the same common words and expressions again and again in different situations, you'll feel much more confident using them yourself. Now, let's move to another real-life situation that many learners face. This story is about my cousin Chloe. Chloe moved to Canada for a new job. She was very intelligent, and her English on paper was excellent. She could read, write, and pass exams without much difficulty. But when she actually arrived in Canada, she quickly noticed something. Conversations in real life felt much harder than anything she had studied in her books. In the office, her colleagues spoke very fast. They used slang she had never heard before. They interrupted each other in friendly ways, which made the conversation feel even more confusing. Chloe often felt like she was running behind, always trying to catch up. One day, she was in an important meeting. Her manager turned to her and said, "Chloe, can you touch base with Mike about the new project?" Chloe froze. Her mind went blank. Touch base? What does that mean? She thought about it literally. Maybe she had to go and touch something on Mike's desk? Maybe there was some object she had to press, like a button? She didn't want to look silly in front of everyone, so she just smiled, nodded, and hoped she could figure it out later. After the meeting, she went to a friendly colleague and asked quietly. Her colleague laughed kindly and explained, "Oh, touch base just means to check in with someone. It's another way of saying, talk to them briefly to get an update." Chloe felt relieved. Just one small phrase had caused her so much confusion, but once she understood it, everything clicked. After that day, Chloe started paying much closer attention to the idioms and expressions her coworkers used in daily conversations. She even bought a small notebook to write them down. And that brings me to a very useful tip for you. When you hear a new phrase or idiom in English, don't just look it up and memorize the definition. That's not enough. Instead, listen carefully to the way it is used in the conversation. Ask yourself, what is the context? What does the speaker's tone of voice sound like? Is it formal or casual? Or maybe even a joke? After that, try repeating the phrase out loud to yourself. Then, when you feel ready, practice using it in one of your own sentences. The more often you use these expressions, the more natural they will feel. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about you. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't understand something in English? Maybe you misheard one small word that completely changed the meaning of a sentence. Or maybe you heard an expression that made no sense to you. What did you do in that moment? Did you ask? Did you guess? Did you stay quiet? Let's imagine one example together. You are checking into a hotel after a long journey. You are tired, you just want to rest. The receptionist smiles and asks you, "Would you like a wake-up call?" If you don't know this phrase, your mind might start racing. A wake-up call?
Do they mean a phone call?
Do they mean some kind of warning? What exactly is this? In reality, a wake-up call is simply a service where the hotel staff calls your room at the time you choose to wake you up in the morning. It's a very common phrase in hotels, but if you don't know it, it can feel confusing in the moment. You might think the receptionist is asking if you need help to wake up in life, a big philosophical question. But in reality, a wake-up call in a hotel is very simple. It's just a service where the hotel staff call your room's telephone at the time you choose in the morning to make sure you wake up. These small but important misunderstandings happen all the time in real life. And this is exactly why listening to real conversations like the stories we share here is such a powerful way to prepare yourself and improve your English. Now, let's do a quick practice exercise together. This will help get your mouth used to forming English words. Remember, speaking is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. I'm going to say a short, simple sentence, and I want you to repeat it out loud after me. Don't be shy, just give it a try. Ready? I'd like to order a coffee, please. Now you try. Great job. Let's do another one. This one is very useful when you don't understand something and you need the other person to say it again. Ready? Could you repeat that, please? Your turn. Excellent. These are simple, polite phrases that you can use in many everyday situations. The more you listen to them, and the more you practice saying them out loud, the more confident and prepared you will feel. Now, let's continue with another real-life story. This one is about my friend Sam. A few years ago, Sam moved to London for a new job. He was absolutely thrilled. Working in a big international company had always been his dream. He had studied English for many years, but most of his learning had come from textbooks and grammar exercises. He thought he was ready. He felt confident. But when he arrived in London, he faced a challenge he had not expected. Real-life conversations were so much harder to understand than the slow, clear audio recordings from his language course. On his very first day at work, his manager, Sarah, introduced him to the rest of the team. Everyone was warm and friendly, but they spoke quickly with an energy and rhythm that felt overwhelming. Phones were ringing. Keyboards were clicking. People were chatting and laughing with each other. The air was filled with expressions and local slang Sam had never seen in any of his books. Suddenly, he felt like all his years of study had disappeared, and he was a beginner again. At lunchtime, one of his new coworkers, Jake, came over with a friendly grin and said, "Hey, Sam, let's go grab a bite."
Sam throws.
His mind was racing. Grab means to take something quickly. A bite means a piece of food you take with your teeth. Did Jake want to grab a piece of Sam's food? That didn't make any sense. He hesitated, his brain trying desperately to translate the phrase, but nothing worked. Finally, he just smiled nervously and said, "Oh, okay." He followed Jake and the others out of the office, still confused and hoping he wasn't about to embarrass himself. When they arrived at a nearby sandwich shop and everyone started ordering lunch, the meaning finally clicked. Grab a bite simply meant, let's get something to eat. Sam felt a huge wave of relief. He laughed at himself quietly, realizing how different real English expressions can be from their literal meanings. The officer asked her, "Do you have anything to declare?" Maya froze. Her heart started to beat faster. Declare? What does that mean? She thought, do they want me to make a big statement about my life? Do they want me to declare something important like a speech? She felt nervous, but she didn't want to look confused. So she just smiled awkwardly and said, Sorry?" The officer repeated the question more slowly. "Do you have anything to declare?" Finally, Maya remembered reading something about this phrase in a travel guide. To declare at the airport simply means to officially report certain items you are bringing into the country. For example, large amounts of money, expensive items like jewelry or food, alcohol, or medicine that has restrictions. Maya quickly shook her head and said, "No." The officer nodded, stamped her passport, and waved her through. Relief washed over her. Later, Maya laughed at herself. The word declare sounded so serious and formal, but in the airport context, it was actually very simple. It was just about making sure you're not bringing in anything that needs special permission. This experience taught her an important lesson. Sometimes everyday English words, like declare or purpose, are used in very specific ways in official situations. If you don't practice listening to those contexts, even common words can feel confusing. That's why practicing with real conversations about travel, work, restaurants, shopping, or daily life is so powerful. When you expose yourself to English as it is actually used, these phrases stop being scary. Instead, they become familiar. Now, let's pause and do a quick mini practice exercise. I'll say the airport questions you might hear, and I want you to repeat them after me, so your mouth gets used to the rhythm. Ready? What's the purpose of your visit? Your turn.
Great.
Do you have anything to declare? Now you try. Excellent. And now let's practice simple answers. Repeat after me. I'm here for tourism. I'm visiting family. No, I don't have anything to declare.
Perfect.
These are short, clear, and polite answers that will help you feel calm and confident at the airport. Maya froze for a moment. The word declare sounded so serious, so official, like something from a legal document. Her mind started racing. Did I bring something illegal by accident? Am I in trouble? She took a deep breath, calmed herself, and said politely, I'm sorry.
Could you repeat that?
The officer, noticing her confusion, rephrased the question. Are you carrying any food, alcohol, or large amounts of money? Now she understood. To declare something simply means to officially report it. She smiled with relief and answered, No, I don't have anything to declare. The officer nodded, stamped her passport, and waved her through. Later, Maya was able to laugh at the situation. She realized that the problem wasn't her English ability. It was simply that she had never heard that specific phrase used in a real-life context before. And this is exactly why listening to natural conversations is so powerful. The more you hear these common phrases in their proper context, the easier it will be to understand and respond naturally, without stress, when you find yourself in the same situation. Now, let's do a quick practice exercise together. I'll say some common travel questions, and I want you to repeat them out loud after me. Try to copy my intonation, the rise and fall of my voice. Ready? Where are you traveling from? Now you say it.
Great.
Do you have a return ticket? Your turn. Excellent. See how short and clear these questions are? The more you practice both listening and speaking, the more confident you will feel when you hear them in real life. Now, let's move on to another very important situation where listening skills can make a big difference: ordering food at a restaurant or a cafe. This is one of the most common interactions you will have while traveling. Imagine you are in a busy, noisy cafe in London. You walk up to the counter, and the barista, working very quickly, asks, What can I get for you? If you are prepared for this question, you can simply answer, I'd like a cappuccino, please. Easy, right? But what if the barista then asks a follow-up question you've never heard before, like, for here or to go? If you're not familiar with this phrase, you might feel a little confused or pressured, especially with people waiting in line behind you. My friend Noah had this exact experience when he traveled to the United States for the first time. He walked into a coffee shop in Chicago and ordered a latte. The cashier smiled and immediately asked, For here or to go? Noah hesitated. He had never heard this phrase before. He thought quickly, To go, maybe that means takeaway? He took a chance and said, To go. Luckily, he was right. But in that moment, he felt nervous because he wasn't completely sure. After that experience, Noah started paying very close attention to how other people ordered their food and drinks. He noticed something interesting. In the US, people often say, Can I get it instead of I would like, for example, Can I get a latte? Can I get a sandwich? It felt more informal, more common in everyday conversations. He also discovered another phrase that confused him at first. That'll be. Cashiers often say this when telling you the price. For example, that'll be $5.50. At first, Noah didn't even realize they were giving him the total price. But once he had heard it a few times in real conversations, it became completely natural. This is why listening to real-life English is so essential. Grammar and vocabulary in a book are useful, yes, but the phrases, tone, and speed of real conversations are what you'll face in everyday life. The more you hear these everyday phrases, the more confident you will feel when it's your turn to speak. So, let's practice a couple of them together. I'll say some common phrases you might hear in a cafe, and I want you to repeat after me. Ready? What can I get for you? Now you say it. Excellent. That'll be $5.50. Try saying it aloud. Wonderful. When you actively listen and then repeat, your brain starts to get used to the sounds and rhythms of English. And the more you practice this, the easier and more automatic speaking becomes. Now, let's continue and explore another important area where your listening and speaking skills can make a massive difference in daily life: making small talk. Small talk is that casual, friendly conversation you have with people in everyday situations, when you meet someone new at a party, when you're waiting in line for a bus, or even with a colleague by the coffee machine at work. It can feel quite difficult at first, or even pointless, especially if you come from a culture where it's not so common. But once you practice it, you'll realize it's actually one of the most valuable ways to improve your fluency and build real connections in English. A few months ago, my friend Isabella, who is originally from Spain, moved to an English-speaking city for her job. She had studied English for many years and had excellent grammar and vocabulary. But she was nervous about speaking with strangers, especially about making small talk. At first, she thought, small talk isn't as important as knowing complex grammar rules. But she quickly discovered that small talk is a huge part of everyday life and workplace culture. During her first week at work, her colleague Mark kindly invited her to join him and a few others for lunch in the break room. Isabella didn't know them well, and she was worried she might say the wrong thing, or that they wouldn't understand her accent. When they sat down to eat, Mark smiled at her and asked, "So, how was your weekend?" Isabella froze for a moment. In Spain, people sometimes talk about their weekend, but it can feel a bit personal. She wasn't sure if she should give a long answer, a short answer, or avoid the question. Finally, she played it safe and said, "It was good. I went to the park with my family." Mark smiled and said, "That sounds nice. What did you do at the park?" And in that moment, Isabella realized something important. This wasn't an interrogation. It wasn't a deep philosophical discussion. It was simply a way to connect with another person. Over the next few days, she became much more comfortable with small talk. She started asking her coworkers simple questions like, "Do you like the weather here? What do you usually do on weekends? Do you like this cafe?" And she was surprised at how natural these little conversations started to feel. One afternoon, his team was working hard to meet a tight deadline. The atmosphere was tense. His manager walked into the room, looked at the piles of work, and said with a completely straight face, "Well, team, if we don't get this finished by 5 o'clock, we can all look forward to a lovely long weekend of working." Everyone laughed, but Daniel didn't. He was confused. He thought, "Wait, are we really working all weekend? Is that a rule here? Did I miss something important?" What Daniel didn't realize was that his manager wasn't being serious at all. She was using sarcasm, a very common type of English humor where the words say one thing, but the meaning is the opposite. In this case, she meant the exact opposite of what she said. Of course, no one wanted to work all weekend. It was a funny, exaggerated way of saying we'd better finish this on time because working all weekend would be terrible. For Daniel, this was a turning point. He realized that understanding English wasn't only about knowing vocabulary and grammar. It was also about listening carefully to tone, context, and intention. Over time, by listening closely to his colleagues and asking questions when he was confused, Daniel started to notice patterns. He learned that when people say something exaggerated with a serious face, it often means they're joking. He also discovered that in British culture, humor is often used to reduce stress or lighten a serious situation. And here's the important lesson. Humor is one of the hardest parts of any language to master. Even if you understand every word, the meaning can still escape you until you've had enough real-life listening practice. The good news is, the more you expose yourself to natural conversations, movies, podcasts, everyday interactions, the easier it becomes to get the joke. And when you finally understand and even laugh along, you'll feel a deep sense of connection, just like Daniel did. Everyone in the meeting laughed. The serious atmosphere in the room suddenly felt lighter. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except Daniel. Daniel didn't laugh because he didn't understand it was a joke. He took the manager's words literally. In his mind, he thought, oh no. Does this mean we really have to work all weekend? His heart sank. He started to panic. He thought about how he would have to cancel his weekend plans, call his family, and tell them he couldn't spend time with them. The thought worried him for the rest of the day. Later that afternoon, Daniel saw one of his colleagues, Emily, by the coffee machine. Emily was always kind, so Daniel decided to ask her about it. Nervously, he said, "Emily, I am very worried about this weekend. I did not know we might have to work. Is that really true?" Emily looked surprised for a moment. Then her face softened and she gave him a gentle smile. "Oh, Daniel," she said kindly, "he was only joking. It was just his dry sense of humor. He didn't mean it literally. He actually meant the opposite." Emily explained that in British culture, people often use sarcasm. Sarcasm is when someone says the opposite of what they really mean, usually in a joking way. It is very common in the UK, and people often use it to make a stressful situation feel lighter and less serious. This was a big aha moment for Daniel. It felt like someone had just given him the key to a secret code. Suddenly, something that had confused him so much finally made sense. He realized that up until now, he had been listening to English only with one part of his brain, the literal dictionary part. He was only thinking about the exact meaning of the words. But English isn't only about the words. It's also about tone of voice, context, and facial expressions. For example, the manager had spoken in a very flat, serious tone, but the situation made it clear it was a joke. Daniel had missed that part. He hadn't been listening for the music of the language. After that day, Daniel started to listen differently. He began to pay attention to more than just the words. When someone said something that sounded strange, instead of panicking, he would stop and think. What is their tone of voice? Are they smiling? Is everyone else laughing? Does this make sense in the situation? At first, it was difficult. He often felt unsure. But little by little, he started to notice the difference between serious comments and jokes. Slowly, he began to understand when his colleagues were teasing each other or being sarcastic. A few months later, the team was under pressure again. They had a lot of work to finish before the deadline. Daniel decided to be brave. He made a small joke of his own. It wasn't complicated, but it was perfectly timed. His colleagues laughed, not just polite, fake laughter, but real, warm laughter. In that moment, Daniel felt something change. He finally felt like he belonged. He realized that fluency was not only about grammar and vocabulary. It was also about understanding people, their humor, their tone, and their culture. So the lesson from Daniel's story is this. When you listen in English, don't only listen with your dictionary brain. Listen with your whole self. Listen to the words, yes, but also pay attention to the meaning behind the words. Notice the person's face. Notice if their voice sounds light or serious. These cultural details can completely change the meaning of what is being said. Understanding these small but powerful details will take your English from just correct to truly fluent and natural. Now, let's move on to another challenge that many English learners face: accents. When you are learning English, it can be very hard to understand all the different accents. English is spoken all over the world, and people sound very different depending on where they are from. For example, a British accent sounds different from an American accent. An Australian accent sounds different again. And even inside one country, there are many variations. For example, in the United States, someone from Texas sounds very different from someone from New York. In the UK, someone from London sounds very different from someone from Scotland. At first, this can feel overwhelming. You might understand your teacher's accent or the accent you hear in your textbook recordings, but when you hear a different accent, suddenly it feels like you know nothing. That's normal. It happens to everyone. Think about your own journey in English. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt lost in a conversation? Maybe the other person was speaking very quickly. Maybe they used slang or an idiom you hadn't learned before. Maybe their accent was simply unfamiliar. If that has happened to you, don't worry. It's a completely normal part of learning. It doesn't mean your English is bad. It just means you need more practice with real conversations and real voices. The key is not to give up. The key is to keep practicing, keep listening, and keep exposing yourself to different kinds of English. Every time you listen to a new accent, your brain gets stronger. It learns to recognize new sounds and patterns. At first it feels impossible, but over time it gets easier. The more you practice, the more confident you will become. Handling problems and complaints in English is another skill that will really help you in daily life. It's not something we usually practice in textbooks, but it's something you will definitely face in the real world. Whether you're staying in a hotel, eating in a restaurant, shopping in a store, or talking to customer service on the phone, sometimes things go wrong. And when they do, you need the right words to explain the problem clearly and politely. Let me share a personal story. A few months ago, I was staying in a hotel during a business trip. After checking into my room, I tried to use the Wi-Fi. But no matter how many times I entered the password, it wouldn't connect. I needed the internet for work, so this was a real problem. I picked up the phone and called the front desk. I said politely, "Excuse me, the Wi-Fi isn't working in my room. Could you help me, please?" The receptionist replied kindly, "I'm sorry to hear that. Let me check and see what I can do." A few minutes later, a staff member came to my room. He restarted the router, tested the connection, and soon everything was working again. Problem solved. I was so relieved. This experience reminded me how useful it is to have simple, polite phrases ready for situations like this. You don't need complicated grammar. You just need to be clear and polite. For example, "Excuse me, the air conditioner isn't working. I'm sorry, but I think there's a mistake with the bill. Could you please send someone to fix it? I'd like to speak to the manager, please." These short sentences are powerful. They show respect, but they also make your problem clear. Let's think of another example. Imagine you are at a restaurant. You order a chicken sandwich, but when the food arrives, you see that it's beef instead. What do? You could say, "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake. I ordered the chicken sandwich, but this looks like beef." Notice how polite that sounds. You are not angry. You are simply pointing out the problem. Most waiters or waitresses will quickly apologize and bring you the correct order. Another situation, you're shopping in a clothing store, and when you get home, you realize the shirt has a hole in it. You go back to the store. What can you say? "Hi, I bought this shirt yesterday, but I just noticed it has a hole. Could I exchange it for a new one, please?" Again, polite, clear, simple. The important thing to remember is this. When something goes wrong, don't panic. Don't feel embarrassed. Problems happen to everyone, even native speakers. The key is to stay calm, be polite, and use these short, useful phrases. Now, let's do a little practice together. I'll say a phrase, and you repeat after me. Ready? "Excuse me, there's a problem with my room." Your turn.
Great.
Now, try this one. "I think there's been a mistake." Your turn. Excellent. And one more. "Could you please help me with this?" Now you say it. The more you practice these simple phrases, the more confident you'll feel in real life. And when the moment comes where you need to make a complaint or explain a problem, you'll be ready. Now, let's stay with this New York story for a moment. Imagine the scene. The city is alive with the sound of honking taxis, people rushing past, and the smell of hot dogs drifting from a street cart. You take a deep breath, step forward, and ask a local, "Excuse me, could you please tell me how to get to the Metropolitan Museum of Art?" Notice the structure of the question. Start with "Excuse me." It's polite and gets the person's attention. Then, "Could you please tell me?" A very natural way to make a request. Finally, add your destination. The local replies quickly, almost too quickly. "Sure, just go straight for 2 blocks, then turn left at the big intersection, and you'll see the museum on your right." Now, let's break down some of those expressions. Go straight, walk forward without turning. 2 blocks. In American cities, this means 2 sections of the street between traffic lights. Turn left at the big intersection, not just any corner, but the main one with traffic lights. On your right, the location will appear on the right-hand side. This short answer contains everything you need: direction, distance, and a landmark. But here's something important. Native speakers often speak quickly and expect you to understand. If you miss something, don't be afraid to ask again. You can say, "Sorry, could you repeat that more slowly? Did you say 2 blocks or 3 blocks? So, I go straight and then left, right?" These little questions show that you're paying attention, and most people will be happy to repeat or clarify. Let's look at a few more useful phrases you might hear when asking for directions. "It's around the corner." Very close, just turn the corner and you'll see it. "It's across the street." On the other side of the road. "It's next to the bank." Giving you a landmark to look for. You can't miss it. It's very easy to find. And here are some polite ways you can ask for directions. "Excuse me, how do I get to the train station? Could you tell me the way to the nearest bus stop? Is this the right way to Central Park?" To practice, try this exercise. Imagine you're lost in a busy city. Close your eyes and picture yourself stopping a stranger. Say this sentence aloud. "Excuse me, could you please tell me how to get to?" Fill in the blank with any place you know: a library, a train station, a park. Practice until it feels natural. The more you imagine these real-life conversations, the more confident you'll feel when it actually happens. Notice how in all these situations, English is more than just words. It's about understanding the context, the tone, and the flow of the conversation. Let's take a closer look at making small talk, which is one of the most important skills for building relationships. A few months ago, I attended a community event in London. While walking around, I met a gentleman named James. He started the conversation casually with, "Lovely weather today, isn't it?" At first, I hesitated for a second, then replied, "Yes, it's a beautiful day. I love how the sunshine brightens everything." That small, simple exchange opened the door to a pleasant conversation about our favorite outdoor activities, local parks, and weekend plans. The lesson here is clear. Small talk doesn't have to be complicated. It's about showing interest, responding naturally, and keeping the conversation flowing. Think about your own experiences. When you meet someone new, what topics do you usually bring up? Start by practicing simple questions like, "How are you today? What have you been up to lately? Did you do anything fun over the weekend?" Practice these questions aloud. The more you repeat them, the easier it will become to respond naturally when someone asks you. Now, let's add another layer. Small talk in professional settings. Imagine you are in a virtual meeting with colleagues from around the world. Your manager might say, "Let's circle back to that point later." If you haven't heard this expression before, it can feel confusing. But circle back simply means return to a topic later in the discussion. When you hear unfamiliar phrases in meetings, jot them down in a notebook. You can ask politely for clarification. "Could you explain that phrase? I'm not sure I understand."
Can you say that again?
Repeating and practicing these phrases will make you more confident in professional conversations. Next, let's think about phone conversations, which can be even more challenging because you rely only on what you hear. I once called customer service to fix an issue with my internet. The representative, John, said clearly, "Can you please describe the problem you're experiencing?" I replied, "My connection keeps dropping, and it's very frustrating." John answered calmly, "I understand. Let me run a diagnostic test on your line." Notice how his calm and clear tone made me feel at ease. To prepare for calls like this, practice saying phrases such as, "Could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you explain that again?" These simple sentences will help you stay calm and communicate clearly during real-life phone conversations. Finally, let's look at travel situations, which can sometimes feel stressful. Imagine you arrive at an airport in an English-speaking country. Over the intercom, you hear, "Due to inclement weather, your flight will be delayed by 30 minutes. If you aren't familiar with the word inclement, it might feel confusing. Later, you can ask a staff member, "Could you tell me what the delay is about?" They might reply, "The delay is because of bad weather conditions." Practicing these situations at home helps you feel confident and prepared. You can imagine yourself in the scenario and repeat the sentences aloud until they feel natural. Remember, English is not just about memorizing words. It's about listening, understanding, and responding in real-life situations. The more you practice these everyday conversations, small talk, professional phrases, phone calls, and travel situations, the more natural your English will become. Repeat key phrases like flight delayed and inclement weather until you feel confident using them. These small phrases appear often in real-life situations, especially when traveling, and practicing them will help you respond naturally. Now, let's move to another everyday conversation, talking about hobbies and interests. Imagine a quiet evening at a local event. You meet someone and they ask, "What do you enjoy doing in your free time?" You might answer, "I love reading, hiking, and trying out new recipes." This type of conversation is a perfect opportunity to learn descriptive adjectives and expand your vocabulary. Think about your favorite hobby. How would you describe it? Practicing questions like this not only improves your vocabulary, but also gives you confidence in sharing personal experiences. Let's do a short interactive exercise together. Repeat each sentence aloud. How are you today? What have you been up to lately? The weather is really nice, isn't it? I'd love to hear more about that. Take your time. Repeat them until they feel natural. This kind of repetition builds muscle memory for real-life conversations. Next, let's look at workplace conversations, including meetings and presentations. Imagine a meeting where your team leader says, "We need to finalize the project timeline by Friday." A colleague, Sarah, asks, "Can everyone please confirm their availability for a meeting on Thursday?" You might respond, "I'm available on Thursday, and I'll send a calendar invite shortly." Notice how clear, concise language helps coordinate plans efficiently. Practicing such exchanges prepares you for real work situations where accuracy and clarity are essential. Here's another professional example. During a conference call, the host might say, "Let's wrap up the discussion and summarize our key points." At first, you might repeat it in your head to understand. Later, you review the phrases, wrap up, summarize, key points. These expressions are very common in meetings. Practice saying them aloud until they become part of your working vocabulary. Now, let's explore a slightly more challenging scenario, handling problems with service providers. Imagine you booked a hotel room, but the Wi-Fi isn't working. You call the front desk and say, "Excuse me, the Wi-Fi in my room isn't working. Could you please help me?" The receptionist replies, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let me check on that for you." Even though this language is simple, it's important to speak clearly and listen carefully. Think about how you would handle a similar situation. Practice these phrases aloud, and even record yourself to notice areas for improvement. Finally, let's look at local expressions and slang, which often appear when traveling. Imagine you're in a market in Australia. A vendor enthusiastically says, "This is a ripper deal." At first, you might be unsure what ripper means. Later, you learn it's Australian slang for excellent or fantastic. By hearing these words in real conversations, you start to understand the meaning through context rather than memorization. Remember, the more you practice listening, repeating, and using these phrases, the more confident and natural your English will become. Everyday situations, talking about hobbies, attending meetings, handling problems, or learning local slang, are all opportunities to improve. This is a perfect example of how listening to real-life conversations helps you learn vocabulary, slang, and idioms that you might not find in textbooks. Think about any slang or expressions you have heard recently. Write them down and try using them in your own sentences. Over time, these words and expressions will become a natural part of your speech. Another common scenario is social gatherings with family and friends. Imagine sitting at a dinner table while everyone shares stories about their day. One person asks, "What was the best part of your day?" You could answer, "I had a wonderful conversation with a new friend at the cafe." This type of warm, informal conversation is common in family settings. Notice the simple but powerful words you can use, like wonderful, enjoyable, delightful. Practicing these expressions in relaxed settings will build your confidence and make your English sound natural. Now, let's talk about digital communication. Modern English is not only spoken, it's written in emails, messages, and video calls. For example, formal email. "Dear Mr. Smith, I hope this email finds you well. Sincerely, Jara." Informal text to a friend. "Hey, are we still on for dinner tonight?" Notice how the language changes depending on the situation. Think about your own experiences. Which style do you find more challenging? Practice both formal and informal writing to develop a balanced English skill set. Next, imagine attending a cultural event, like an art exhibition. A curator explains a painting. This artwork reflects the artist's inner turmoil during a time of great change. You ask, what inspired this style? The curator replies, the use of bold colors and dynamic brush strokes represents the conflict between tradition and modernity. This kind of conversation teaches artistic vocabulary and helps you describe abstract ideas. Try practicing how you would talk about a piece of art or a cultural event. This will make your vocabulary richer and your conversations more engaging. Another practical situation is academic discussions. Imagine you are in a university lecture. Today we will explore the impact of global warming on urban development. After the lecture, you ask, could you please elaborate on the strategies cities are using to combat climate change? This dialogue requires both active listening and careful thinking. Try summarizing what you learned in your own words. Practicing this skill will help you understand and participate in future academic conversations. Finally, remember that spontaneous conversations are also very important. These are the unscripted, real-life exchanges you have every day. Listening carefully, responding naturally, and practicing regularly will help you feel confident in any situation, whether formal, informal, academic, or social. Imagine you are sitting in a community park, enjoying the fresh air. Nearby, a group of people are talking about the news in your town. One person says, the new park renovations have really transformed this area. You can join the conversation by saying something simple like, I agree. The improvements are fantastic. Have you noticed the new playground features? These kinds of unscripted interactions are a great opportunity to practice impromptu speaking and active listening. Ask yourself, when was the last time you joined a conversation like this? How did you start speaking? What strategies could you use next time to join in smoothly? Now, let's think about online conversations, which are very common today. You might participate in forums, chat rooms, or social media groups. The language there is often informal. People may use abbreviations, slang, or even emojis. For example, you might see a post like, has anyone tried the new cafe downtown? It's lit. Even if the language seems casual, it teaches you a lot about current slang and how people really communicate in English. Spend some time browsing English forums or groups online. Watch how people interact, how they ask questions, and how they respond. Then try to use some of these words or expressions in your own conversations or messages. Another important skill is handling disagreements or misunderstandings. Even when you speak clearly, miscommunication can happen. For example, I once had a conversation with a friend where we disagreed about a current event. Instead of arguing or feeling frustrated, I said, I see your point, but I have a different perspective. Can we clarify our thoughts further? Phrases like these help keep conversations polite, respectful, and constructive. Think about any disagreements you've had in English. What phrases could you have used to make the conversation smoother? You can practice these phrases with a friend or record yourself speaking until they feel natural. Now, let's move to a very effective way to practice speaking and vocabulary, storytelling. Telling your own story helps you speak clearly, organize your thoughts, and make your conversations more interesting. Imagine you want to tell someone about a memorable day when everything went differently than planned. You could start with, one day, I found myself lost in a busy city, and that experience taught me the value of patience and resourcefulness. As you tell your story, include details about what you saw, heard, and felt. Describe the people, the sounds, the streets, and even your emotions. Storytelling helps you practice new vocabulary, form sentences naturally, and express yourself confidently. Think about a recent experience in your life. Try to narrate it in English, step by step. You don't need long sentences. Start simple and add details gradually. The more you practice, the easier it will become. Finally, let's do a listening and speaking exercise together. Repeat after me, paying attention to natural rhythm, stress, and intonation. I enjoy spending time in the park. The new playground is really fun. I learned something new today. Can you explain that again, please? Practice these sentences slowly at first, then try saying them faster. Repetition will help your brain remember how English sounds naturally. Over time, you will feel more confident joining conversations, telling stories, and interacting in real life or online. Let's start with some common conversational phrases. Repeat each one several times until it feels natural. I appreciate your help. Could you please repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. That sounds interesting. I would love to join you. Repeating these phrases helps build your muscle memory, making it easier to use them in real conversations. Now, imagine you are at a live music concert. The announcer's voice fills the room. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for an unforgettable performance by tonight's headliner. This type of energetic announcement shows how English can be vibrant and exciting. Practice matching the speaker's tone. For example, if you want to compliment the performance, you could say, "The energy on stage is electrifying." Practicing expressive and dynamic language helps you adjust your tone and pace depending on the situation. Next, picture yourself in a quiet bookstore. You approach a clerk and ask, "Could you recommend a good mystery novel?" The clerk smiles and replies, "Certainly, this bestseller has a captivating plot and intriguing characters." This interaction teaches you polite questions and descriptive adjectives. Try describing your favorite book or genre using sentences like, "My favorite book is exciting and full of unexpected twists." Practicing this helps you share your interests clearly and confidently. Now, let's imagine a visit to a government office, such as applying for a passport. The clerk greets you. "Good morning. How may I assist you today?" You answer politely, "I need to renew my passport, please." The clerk continues with questions like, "Could you please provide your current passport number?" Or, "Do you have all the required documents?" These conversations require you to be clear, polite, and precise. Practice these dialogues with a friend or even in front of a mirror. Using words like please and thank you makes your conversation smoother and more effective. Another common situation is visiting a doctor's office. The physician asks, "How have you been feeling recently?" You might reply, "I've been experiencing headaches and a bit of fatigue." The doctor then asks, "Can you describe the nature of your headaches?" These conversations need clear communication. Practice describing health problems in simple, direct language. For example, "I feel unwell. The pain is moderate and sometimes sharp." This prepares you for real medical discussions in English. Digital communication is also important. Think about video calls. You see the speaker's words, facial expressions, and gestures. For example, a colleague might say, "Can everyone see my screen? Please let me know if you have any questions." Video calls require clear speaking and active listening. You can practice by joining webinars or virtual meetups. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Finally, listening to current events can improve your English. Imagine hearing a news report. Local communities are coming together to address recent flooding. This kind of language is formal and informative. Pay attention to the vocabulary and phrases. They help you understand news, reports, and public announcements. By practicing all these real-life situations, conversations, storytelling, digital communication, and current events, you'll improve your English naturally. Every time you listen, speak, or repeat phrases, you are training your brain to think and respond in English. After listening to a news report, try summarizing it in your own words. For example, the report might talk about neighborhoods coming together to deal with severe flooding. When you summarize, you practice processing information, remembering new vocabulary, and speaking clearly. This is an important skill for both listening and speaking in English. Another useful scenario is participating in group discussions or debates. Imagine you are at a community forum talking about social media. Someone might say, "I believe social media has revolutionized the way we communicate, but it also presents challenges, such as privacy concerns."
You could respond with something like,
I agree that social media has its benefits, but I'm curious about its effects on face-to-face interactions. Joining discussions like this helps you hear different opinions and practice expressing your own ideas clearly. Think about a discussion you have been part of before. What phrases did you use to agree politely or disagree respectfully? Practicing these phrases will make them a natural part of your conversation. Now, let's move to everyday shopping situations. Imagine walking into a department store and needing help to find something. You might say to a sales associate, "Excuse me, could you help me locate the electronics section?" The associate could reply, "Yes, it's on the second floor near the home appliances area." These short conversations are very useful. They teach you how to ask politely, give or follow directions, and use clear, simple language. You can also practice asking for extra help, for example. "Could you please show me where that is?" Repeating these exchanges helps you feel more confident when shopping in real life. Next, let's think about unexpected situations. Imagine you are out with friends and the weather suddenly changes. Someone might say, "It looks like we're in for a downpour. Let's find shelter." You could respond with, "I'll grab my umbrella," or ask, "Does anyone know where we can take cover?" These spontaneous conversations are different from prepared ones. You need to respond quickly and clearly. Reflect on times when you faced unexpected situations. How did you talk to others? Practicing these scenarios with a friend helps you react confidently when it happens in real life. By listening, repeating phrases, and practicing these everyday situations, news, discussions, shopping, and emergencies, you will notice your English becoming more natural and automatic. The more you practice, the easier it will feel to understand and respond in real conversations. Now, let's consider a scenario involving a friendly debate about food. Imagine you are at a dinner party. Someone says, "Italian food is the best because of its rich flavors and variety."
You could respond with,
"I love Italian food, too, but I also enjoy the spicy kick of Thai cuisine." This kind of conversation helps you practice comparing ideas and expressing preferences. Pay attention to the words used. Words like rich, variety, spicy, and enjoy make your speech more colorful and interesting. Think about the adjectives you usually use when talking about food, hobbies, or other interests. Practice making sentences with these words so your English sounds natural and expressive. Next, let's think about nonverbal communication. Even though we focus on listening and speaking, body language and tone are very important. Imagine a friend telling you an exciting story. You might hear excitement in their voice, laughter, a pause before a punchline, changes in pitch. These subtle signals tell you how they feel. Even on the phone, you can notice emotions through tone. While practicing, try smiling as you speak and changing your tone naturally. This makes your English sound friendly and engaging. Each scenario you practice builds on the previous one. By repeating these exercises, you are learning real-life English step by step. From ordering food, asking for directions, joining meetings, attending cultural events, participating in debates, to handling unexpected situations, every conversation helps you improve. Remember, every interaction is a chance to practice. The more you listen, repeat, and respond, the more confident and fluent you will become. Even small daily conversations are important. They teach you the natural rhythm of English, useful phrases, and how people really speak in everyday life. Every conversation you have is an opportunity to practice and improve your English. Every time you speak, listen, or read, you are learning. Even short conversations, small talks, or simple questions help you get better. Imagine your future self speaking confidently in any situation. You might be ordering coffee in a cafe, asking for directions in a new city, or leading a meeting at work. Picture yourself responding naturally, without hesitation. When you practice regularly, this can become your reality. The key is to listen to real English, not just from books, but from conversations, videos, podcasts, and daily life. The more you hear how people really speak, the easier it will be for you to respond naturally. You will start noticing common phrases, the rhythm of sentences, and the way words connect in everyday speech. Remember, every conversation counts. Even small interactions like saying hello to a neighbor or asking a clerk for help are important. Mistakes are normal. They are part of learning, and each mistake teaches you something new. The more you practice, the more confident you become. Think about all the situations where English is used. You might talk with friends, join group discussions, ask questions at school, or handle customer service issues. You might even listen to news, storytelling, or podcasts. Every scenario gives you new words, new expressions, and new confidence. Visualize yourself speaking clearly and confidently. Imagine understanding someone's jokes, following directions, asking questions politely, and sharing your ideas naturally. These are skills that come from listening carefully, practicing regularly, and learning from every experience. To improve faster, practice repeating phrases aloud. For example, how are you today? What have you been up to lately? Could you repeat that, please? I would love to join you. Repeat them until they feel comfortable and natural. Doing this helps your brain remember how to respond in real conversations. Also, imagine different real-life situations. At a cafe, what can I get for you? That'll be $5.50. Asking for directions, go straight for 2 blocks, then turn left. At work meetings, let's wrap up and summarize the key points. At a store or hotel, could you help me find this item? Or, the Wi-Fi isn't working in my room. With friends, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? Practicing these situations regularly will make you more comfortable, confident, and fluent. Finally, listen, practice, and do not fear mistakes. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. Every conversation is a chance to get better. Keep speaking, keep listening, and keep learning. If you enjoyed this, you can subscribe to the Super English Talks and turn on notifications. That way, you'll get new episodes and more chances to practice your English. Remember, every small step counts. Every conversation, story, or question you ask moves you closer to speaking English naturally and confidently. Keep practicing, and soon English will feel like a natural part of your life.